An electrical service includes the conductors and equipment that deliver electrical power from the utility company's distribution system to the wiring system of a building. A key component of any electrical service is the service disconnect, which is a means to shut off all electrical power to the building. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, dictates the requirements for service equipment, including the location and type of disconnects. In a typical residential service, the service conductors run from the utility's transformer to a meter, which measures the amount of electricity consumed. From the meter, the service conductors continue to the service disconnect and then to the main service panel. Now let's address the question of whether an interior panel is considered a subpanel when there is an exterior service disconnect. The NEC defines a service disconnect as a device or group of devices used to simultaneously disconnect all ungrounded conductors of a circuit from the source of supply. The service disconnect must be readily accessible and located at a readily accessible point nearest the entrance of the service conductors to the building. The main service panel is the first panel after the service disconnect. It contains the main overcurrent protective device, typically a circuit breaker or a set of fuses, that protects the entire electrical system of the building. It's also where the neutral and grounding conductors are bonded together, creating a single point where the electrical system is connected to the earth. A subpanel, on the other hand, is a distribution panel that receives its power from the main service panel. It's used to provide additional circuits for specific areas or appliances within the building. In a subpanel, the neutral and grounding conductors must be kept separate, and there must be a grounding busbar connected to the grounding electrode system. There should be no bonding between the neutral and ground in a subpanel. In a scenario where the service disconnect is mounted exterior to the building, underneath the meter, and a separate service panel is located inside the house some distance away, the determination of whether the interior panel is a subpanel depends on several factors. Firstly, if the interior panel does not have a main disconnect and is wired as a main service panel, it raises a red flag. Secondly, if the exterior service disconnect and the interior service panel are not in the same enclosure and location, the interior panel is typically considered a subpanel. The NEC requires the service disconnect to be located at a readily accessible point nearest the entrance of the service conductors to the building. If the interior panel is not at this location and does not contain the main service disconnect, it cannot be considered the main service panel. Instead, it must be treated as a subpanel. Here's why this distinction is important. Firstly, safety. Proper separation of neutral and ground in subpoles prevents circulating currents on the grounding conductors, which can create electrical noise and increase the risk of electric shock. Secondly, code compliance. The NEC has specific requirements for subpanels, including the separation of neutral and ground, the use of a grounding busbar, and the proper sizing of conductors and overcurrent protection devices. Thirdly, functionality. Treating the interior panel as a subpanel ensures that the electrical system is properly grounded and protected, which can improve its performance and reliability. To properly convert the interior panel to a subpanel, several steps must be taken. Firstly, install a main breaker in the interior panel. This will serve as the main disconnect for the subpanel and provide overcurrent protection for the feeder conductors. Secondly, separate the neutral and grounding conductors. Remove the bonding screw or strap that connects the neutral busbar to the panel enclosure. Thirdly, connect the grounding conductors to a dedicated grounding busbar. This busbar should be connected to the grounding electrode system via a grounding electrode conductor. Fourthly, ensure that the feeder conductors are properly sized for the load they will be carrying and that the overcurrent protection devices are sized accordingly. In the described scenario, the 90 amp service indicates the size of the service entrance conductors and the main overcurrent protection at the service disconnect. The feeder conductors running from the exterior service disconnect to the interior subpanel must be sized to carry the load served by the subpanel, but no smaller than what is dictated by the overcurrent protection device at the service disconnect. This is per NEC 310.15. Additionally, the grounding electrode conductor must be properly sized according to NEC 250.66 based on the size of the service entrance conductors. Grounding is a critical aspect of electrical safety. It provides a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source, which allows the overcurrent protection device to trip and to energize the circuit. Proper grounding also helps to minimize voltage fluctuations and reduce the risk of electric shock. Here's a summary of the key considerations for determining whether an interior panel is a subpanel. Firstly, location of the service disconnect. The service disconnect must be located at a readily accessible point nearest the entrance of the service conductors to the building. Secondly, presence of a main disconnect in the interior panel. If the interior panel does not have a main disconnect, it cannot be considered the main service panel. Thirdly, separation of neutral and ground. In a subpanel, the neutral and grounding conductors must be kept separate. Fourthly, proper grounding. The subpanel must be properly grounded to the grounding electrode system. Understanding these factors is crucial for ensuring the safety and compliance of residential electrical systems. If there's any doubt about whether an interior panel is a subpanel, it's always best to consult with a qualified electrician. They can assess the situation, determine the proper wiring configuration, and make any necessary corrections. Electrical work can be dangerous and should only be performed by qualified individuals who are familiar with the NEC and local electrical codes. Improper wiring can lead to electric shock, fire, and other hazards. The NEC is a comprehensive set of standards that governs the safe installation of electrical wiring and equipment. It's updated every 3 years to reflect changes in technology and best practices. It's important for electricians and other electrical professionals to stay up to date on the latest NEC requirements. In addition to the NEC, local electrical codes may also apply. These codes may be more stringent than the NEC in some areas. It's important to check with the local electrical inspector to determine which codes apply in a particular jurisdiction. Electrical inspections are typically required for new construction, renovations, and other electrical work. The purpose of an electrical inspection is to ensure that the work is performed in accordance with the NEC and local electrical codes. Electrical inspectors are qualified professionals who are trained to identify electrical hazards. They can help to ensure that electrical systems are safe and reliable. When planning electrical work, it's always best to obtain the necessary permits and schedule an electrical inspection. This will help to ensure that the work is performed safely and in compliance with all applicable codes. In the context of the provided scenario, the fact that the interior panel is wired as a main service panel without a main disconnect, while the service disconnect is located externally, strongly suggests that the interior panel is indeed a subpanel. To reiterate the steps to correct this: firstly, install a main breaker in the interior panel to serve as a subpanel's disconnect. Secondly, isolate the neutral and ground, removing any bonding. Thirdly, establish a dedicated grounding bus bar connected to the grounding electrode system. These steps ensure that the interior panel operates safely and in compliance with electrical codes as a subpanel fed from the service disconnect. Remember, electrical installations should always be performed by qualified electricians familiar with local codes and the NEC to guarantee safety and proper functionality.